You gave a memorable speech, eulogy at the memorial to George Floyd, where you talked about getting the knee off the necks of the entire black community. What do you make of what has happened in the weeks since his death?
Well, it has been a tremendous outpouring of people of all races that have come out and continued mostly very peaceful but very vibrant protest to say there needs to be a reordering of how we do policing and how we deal in other institutions, including having statues glorifying Confederate racists. And I am very hopeful because these are the things we've worked for decades that we are still a part of. And the energy has not decreased, it's increased. In fact, we have called Martin Luther King III, who is Dr. King's son, and I have called a national march on the anniversary of the I Have a Dream March of '63. We're doing it August 28th, where we now are really pushing for legislation, some of which has already been proposed. So I think we're going to have a combination of legislation coming from the demonstrations as the demonstrations continue.
But Rev Al Sharpton, how concerned are you about where the line gets drawn? For example, on statues. You know, I completely concur that Confederacy leader statues are completely inappropriate, and many of them have been taken down. But when that has been extended in recent days to people ripping down statues of President Ulysses Grant, for example, or President Washington, Thomas Jefferson and others, it worries me that rather like with the pulling down of the defacing of statues of Winston Churchill here, it alienates a lot of people when you target former presidents who remain hugely popular with many people.
Well, we're having a collective meeting of leaders of civil rights organizations like mine, National Action Network, and others to discuss it. It gets more complicated as you get to some that actually were figures that were because of government positions erected, some of which are very guilty of racism. But I think the obvious ones, in terms of those that the only reason that they are in history at all is they represented Confederacy and racism and slavery. I think those are the ones that everyone has agreed upon. I will get a consensus on the others, but I don't want even that to displace the focus on policing and making sure we get that legislation through so that we end up with a debate on some things that may be something that is unpopular or even
When you see people, Reverend Sharpton, when you see people, as they have been doing in America and here, hit back with, well, white lives matter too, all lives matter. What is the correct response to that?
The correct response to that is there's never been any argument that white lives matter. There's never been any debate. And when a white life is taken, it is litigated, prosecuted, and if convicted, incarcerated. The problem has been it has not been equal on the other side. So there's been no equal need to say white lives matter. That has been a given, and the system has worked that way. It has not worked that way around black lives. So we're not saying black lives matter more. We're saying black lives matter as much, equally, and should be treated the same.
Absolutely right. There was a counter-protest in London after the Black Lives Matter protests. And during that, there was an incredibly symbolic photograph taken of a man called Patrick Hutchinson, who was photographed rescuing an injured man during those clashes. Now, he received praise from around the world, including from yourself. He made a specific point that this isn't black people versus white people. This is everybody against racists. And you had said about him that Patrick did more to show the public of the values and moral outrage at its highest level than any of us could have done with a speech, and I respect him greatly, and I hope next time in England I can meet him. Well, of course, under current restrictions, you can't literally meet him in the same room, but we would like to bring you together this morning on television. Patrick Hutchinson, joins us now. Very good morning to you, Patrick. Reverend Al Sharpton, I wonder what you would like to say to Patrick.
Well, first of all, I'm very honored and happy to meet him, even if we're meeting over television. And I want to say, Patrick, I get up and work out every morning. And one morning, very early, I have the news on while I'm doing my physical workout. I saw what you did, and it warmed my heart. I had just come from a demonstration the day before and had done several speeches. And what I've tried to articulate, you did in one gesture. Because as a student of Dr. Martin Luther King, who also therefore studied Gandhi, Gandhi said we must become the change we seek. You demonstrated that without opening your mouth, without any drama, without any press notices. And I want you to know you put the movement in a keener perspective than anything those of us that's been out there could say or do. And I admire you greatly. The words could not pronounce how much I admire what you did.
Patrick, what would you like to say back to Reverend Sharpton?
Morning, Reverend. It's a great honour to meet you, and you know, I'm representing my family when I say that, because they've all said that when you do get to speak to the Reverend, please pass on our gratitude for everything that you've done for civil rights for us the world over, for Black people the world over. So I'm actually honoured to be speaking to you right now. I'm a bit nervous, so please bear with me. But yes, you know, I totally agree with everything that you've been saying. You know, it's time that things change. You know, they just can't continue the way that they have been. And I'm glad to know that I've done something that has helped, you know, push this along. This whole movement, this whole change that we're striving for. I'm just glad that I've been able to do just a small thing to help it.
Well, God bless you, and you've done a tremendous thing, because we are not marching out of hate. We're marching out of love for everyone. And if we become infected by the rancor and the hatred that we're fighting, then we become the replacements, not the reformation or the answer. And you demonstrated that, and you keep strong, and give my love to your family. And when I do come to England again and we can get socialize, I'd love to meet you and your family. You're my kind of people.
Oh, thank you very much.
Patrick, you said something very important in the wake of that photograph going around the world and touching the hearts of people around the world, including Reverend Al Sharpton, and that was that this is not about black versus white. This is about everyone versus racism. And I just wonder, you know, there is a danger that we're picking up here, that this could actually, you know, be a moment of division rather than unity, that people don't like the idea that because of their colour of their skin, they might be considered racist, that there's some kind of suggestion that white lives don't matter because of the Black Lives Matter campaign. What would you say to those people? Because you did provide a unifying message. I mean, even the symbolism of that photograph was a unifying message.
Yes, morning, Susanna.
Morning.
I mean, you know, what I would say is that I'd like to think the actions of my friends on that day, as well as some of the other protesters that also helped us save that man, that in itself tells you white lives do matter. We're shown with actions. So it's not about, you know, that. It's just about, you know, an equal playing field for all of us. Because right now it's just not. It's not equal. There's nothing to be worried about. We just need our white counterparts on side with us, alongside us, with the fight. You know, we're not against them. We want them with us. If they're not racist, then they're on our side. You know, and we're not just talking about people that like to, you know, use profanity or racist words. If you don't do that, you're not racist. We want you to stand up alongside us, you know, and call out racism wherever you see it.
Reverend Sharpton, we've had extraordinary scenes in this country where the entire Premier League football team setup have all been taking the knee, every player and every team. And they've all had, instead of their names on the back of their shirts, they've all had the words Black Lives Matter. This is completely unprecedented. We've never had anything like this in the UK. You yourself also noted that for the first time you noticed the marches, which have been enormous in America and around the world, but in many places you've seen marches where a number of young white people marching has outnumbered the number of black people marching. It does feel like there is something different about this now, that there may be an opportunity to affect real change.
I believe that we are there at the precipice of a real change, and that's why it must be encouraged, and that's why it must continue. And I totally agree with Patrick. This is not about white versus black. It's right versus wrong.